My name is Adam Elkassas. I'm the founder of Pre.dev, and we have something special in store for you today. Welcome to the AI Intelli-gents Podcast by Pre.dev. Pre.dev is the fastest way to prototype software products, and we're bringing you insights into the AI industry from the front lines. Usually my co-host will be Arjun Jain. He's not going to make it today because unfortunately he underwent shoulder surgery this week. In a startup, you can't always predict what's going to happen. I tried to convince him to do a Through the Wire episode, similar to Kanye, but it didn't happen. Fortunately, we have a great guest to fill us in, and someone that's been with Pre.dev for, over a year and a half and has seen us grow from, our first sale to where we are now. And I'd like to introduce James Hansen. James is a master in finance from U Miami. He's the vice president of business development at Pre.dev, and essentially, he's been pivotal to bringing Pre.dev to the market and really giving us the feedback to take Pre.dev and the features to where it is today. So with that being said, I'm going to let James introduce himself.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you so much for the warm introduction, Adam. And yeah, my wishes go to Arjun, and I hope he has a speedy recovery. But yeah, thank you for allowing me to be on this podcast today in replace of Arjun. Happy to share insights about our journey here at Pre.dev. As Adam mentioned, I have a background in finance. Graduated from the University of Miami. Ended up working in a hybrid tech role, and then kind of started dabbling into the startup ecosystem in Miami, given that we have so many different programs. And, luckily I was able to, meet you here in Miami with a brilliant tech scene that's flourishing. And, it's been an amazing ride so far here at Pre.dev. And I think that, the future has a lot of promising things for this startup. So yeah, we can definitely dive into, different topics and kind of, bounce ideas around on this episode.
Awesome. So when was the first time you heard about Pre.dev, and what were your impressions? What were your thoughts?
Yeah, so essentially we had gotten on a call about a year and a half ago. And, this was, pre-launch. This was still at a time when the startup was at its infant stage, and you had a pretty good prototype that was already, fulfilling the use case of helping a non-technical founder turn their idea into a prototype. So, not having a degree in computer science, but having a technical background, I already knew that this is definitely going to be a pivotal product for, folks that are looking to launch their companies in tech. So yeah, I would say, that was my first interaction with the product.
Awesome. Yeah, what was your experience with, when you first joined the Pre.dev team? Like, what were some of the problems you saw in the industry? Like, what did you notice right away after, working a couple years in crypto and fintech, and then, AI is just booming, especially a year ago, things were still early. So what did it feel like being in, we were only a team of 5 or 6 at the time, and but on the front lines of the AI race, essentially.
Yeah, so essentially what I noticed what was missing was that gap, that automation that can assist somebody that doesn't have a degree in computer science once again, right? Because a lot of people have brilliant ideas when it comes to tech. And, if you're trying to revolutionize or shake up an industry or shake up the world, tech is a great way to do that. The only problem is that a lot of people are non-technical, right? And, with your story, running your dev agency out in Puerto Rico, one thing you said was, you got to see firsthand the pain points of having to get on multiple calls with, multiple founders and then kind of have to go through this mundane process of almost bringing them back to university computer science 101 when the main goal is to just get their prototype out there. So yeah, I think the problem that's being solved is huge for the growth in tech and the growth in the amount of problems that are now going to be solved at a faster rate because of a product like Pre.dev that can help you streamline your idea and get to the meat and bones and potatoes of the product, and having a prototype out there faster that people can test and prove your use case.
So, Pre.dev, we're not necessarily an accelerator. We've worked with accelerators, we've worked with a lot of founders. How many founders have you personally talked to just in the last year?
Yeah, I would have to say by now, probably, if we're doing a combination of, dev agencies and founders, I've at least spoke to, 500 plus, founders, and definitely over 1,000 plus development agencies at this point on.
Wow, wow. Out of the founders, what did you notice common problems, common pain points that they had when they were, coming to you with their, speculative ideas, looking to build a product, but, what were their disposition when they first came to you?
Yeah, I think like the common, dispositions are, budgeting, financial needs, not knowing whether or not they're going to be able to afford the prototype or the tech they're trying to build, not being able to hire a team, and then also just where to start. Right, there's so many different applications out there that are trying to get their attention. Hey, build your design here, start here. But at the end of the day, it doesn't really take them from A to Z, right? Because there's only so much these platforms can offer them, but essentially they need a whole team behind them. So I think, a lot of the founders that I met, they don't have a 5 to 10 person team, right? And I think in an ideal scenario, you know, people would love to start a company and have 5 to 10 people already, behind you, whether it's an engineer, somebody doing the marketing. So, a lot of these founders were running a one-man army. So, they had the whole world on their shoulder just to launch this prototype. So I think one of the main pain points for them was not feeling like they had enough support to launch their ideas.
Where were they going before they came to us, I guess? What did their processes look like? And then when you got on a call with them, how did it change, when you first entered their idea into Pre.dev and showed them their idea coming to life, essentially?
Yeah, so essentially, from the best of my knowledge, they were going all over the internet, right? Wherever they can find somebody that says, "Hey, I can, help you launch your thing." But the problem was that they were being charged, thousands of dollars just to get a concept. Whether it was a Figma file or a sketch of their design, and that's pretty much 50% of their budget already, right? So, a lot of them didn't have like a one-stop shop type of solution or a platform where they can pretty much go from A to Z. It was pretty much they're going online and trying to gather bits and pieces, whether it's from an article, whether it's from a forum they read, something they saw on social media, and they're pretty much trying to glue their startup together, right? And, the statistics show that 90% of startups fail within their first year. So they just end up becoming, another statistic. So yeah, I think them coming here, they made the realization that, we're going to be here to hold their hand in a good way and take them from A to Z.
Nice, nice. Yeah, that's definitely interesting. You also, if I recall, had some experience being a founder yourself and trying to build things. And I know that you just tell me your experience with Upwork. And could you just explain that process? And if you noticed, other founders that you talked to experience that?
Yeah, so oftentimes, I think founders are a lot smarter than they think they are. And oftentimes, when you're working with, a stranger almost on Upwork, they don't really know you personally. And sometimes they're just in there for the quick bucks and they take advantage of a lot of founders, right? And essentially, founders are spending their budget on low quality products, right? So my experience on Upwork is, sometimes I have to overshare what I need instead of them understanding what it is I'm trying to build, right? So I think that takes away from that time that can be used more productively to share your idea with either a platform like Pre.dev, where it can understand what it is you're trying to build without having to overemphasize on a lot of points. So I definitely think there's a disconnect when you're working with folks on Upwork, only because they're not an expert in your industry per se. Sure, they might be a developer, but they don't really understand why you're building it, and there's going to be that disconnect there. So you'd be lucky to find somebody on Upwork that really understands your vision and your project, that makes it a bang for your buck.
So why is it easier on pre-dev, I guess? For the viewers, they might not know all the ins and outs of pre-dev. And you explained a process that probably 95% of founders, especially if they're non-technical and aren't coding the products themselves, even if they are technical in coding, there's a lot of other things on the list that you have to do as a founder, including marketing, sales, outbound, inbound, SEO, etc. So how do you focus your time? How does pre-dev change that founder experience when, at least from the product perspective?
Yeah, so essentially, Pre.dev is your, expert project manager, right? That's trained on so much, proprietary data that's essentially helping the platform understand, my project better than I even understand it, right? So what makes Pre.dev super cool is that, you can type in a sentence or two, and then Pre.dev will already be 10 steps ahead and start giving you ideas on the infrastructure, the front end, the functionality, the user flows, and everything like that. So let's say I wasn't even thinking about a specific feature, Pre.dev will already be 2 steps ahead and give me certain ideas that otherwise wouldn't have came to fruition if I wasn't engaging with the tool. So I think it's definitely an easier way to, get started, right? I don't have to have a 30-page blueprint to get my idea off the ground. I can come with, a paragraph or one pager, and then Pre.dev will do the rest of the job for me, and then I can make my revisions.
What do you think the magic, like out of all the founder interviews you've had, what was like the most magic moment that you noticed, where they had that, twinkle in their eye and they saw that one feature that really blew their mind?
Yeah, I like to say it all the time, right? It's like taking your kid or, a family member or a friend to Disneyland, right? They get to go on the amusement park. So I think, with this industry, it's a brick and mortar system where there's not that much interaction in that discovery process. So I think having a founder live on that initial call, discovery call, and seeing their idea being built in real time by a pre-dev specialist, or whether they're using the tool as a standalone, it's an amazing experience for them because they've been pretty much, whether taking courses or just on Figma all day building sketches. Right now, they get to actually see their infrastructure architecture built in real time, and then they can even generate code. So I think that's a very exciting experience for a founder, especially given the fact that they don't have to cough up tens and thousands of dollars.
No, that's definitely on point. And, you know, it is a unique perspective because there are not too many companies that allow you to interact that closely with founders and go on that journey with them. So that's definitely really interesting. I want to get to so James spearheaded one of our first partnerships, which was with Venture Miami at the time. They recently changed their name, but we basically partnered with Chris Daniels, Eric Gavin, Burhan, and their Built in Miami program, and helped over 300 founders, gave them access to our tool, presented a few demos as well. And James basically organized this partnership, and I want to pick his brain on how that came up and his experience through that program, and also transitioning to a preview for the audience of how the South Florida tech scene is comparing and putting itself on the map?
Yeah, for sure. So essentially, that relationship actually started back in college when I was president of the cryptocurrency club, and I actually met Chris Daniels at a dinner that the president was hosting. And I did have his number. However, after college, we kind of, lost contact for a bit. And yeah, just through networking, I met a friend of a friend who had brought up the program to me. And coincidentally enough, the person who was running it was Chris Daniels, and I still had his number. So, I gave him a call and said, "Hey, it's James. If you remember me, we had the dinner at the crypto club dinner. And yeah, I heard you're running this amazing program. And right now we have a software that's, helping folks that are in your program essentially turn their idea into a, full on developed app. So, we'd love to be a part of this journey." And given that the program was still, very young, they were still open to implementing different partners and solutions. So Chris was all open for it, right? There was no friction. It was a match made in heaven. So yeah, essentially that relationship, as I mentioned, came from a previous dinner. And, one thing I learned about that is that, you always want to leave relationships on a good note, right? Even if you haven't spoken to somebody for years, right? I think there's a quote by Maya Angelou that says, people might not remember what you said to them, but they'll remember how you made them feel, right? So I think having a good first impression with Chris led to that, relationship fostering into what it became. And yeah, that's kind of how I would say that partnership started.
So, what's your experience been? Networking in the South Florida tech scene, Miami scene. What growth have you seen in this part of the country? And compared to, you're from the New York area, and you see events out there. What does it look like to, be a tech startup in the Miami area?
Yeah, so I think it's very hip. It's very cool. Miami's really big on hospitality. So I think like the blend of Miami hospitality and tech makes it a whole lot easier to get in the rooms with the right people, whether it's investors, potential partners, potential clients and users. It's a lot easier to socialize and mingle. I think, in other cities, it might be a little more cliquey, right? Old school people that have already been in the tech scene, it might be harder to get in those rooms. And the good thing about Miami is that there is capital, right? There's capital in Miami, there's connections. It's just a matter of, are we going to continue to take the projects that we're building here seriously and not just make it some sort of, marketing tactic where we're just, throwing a bunch of fancy events, getting in the rooms with the right people, but not actually closing deals. So I think the city so far has shown great potential. And I believe that a lot more serious investors are, stepping into the city to actually put a dollar amount on these projects to help them flourish, and also so they can get a return on investment.
Yeah, no, I mean, it feels good to be part of a movement and a growing ecosystem, and also I think it's just an ecosystem that's conducive to growing a company. It's more conducive than, say, living in San Francisco where the rent prices are super high, taxes are super high. As a founder, we have to be lean, and I think it's a perfect combination, and a growing ecosystem.
Correct.
From, I guess, like in terms of a unique perspective, because not everybody gets to work at an AI startup, right? Like there are a bunch of AI startups now, but a lot of them, are one or two people, and this AI boom has just been happening the last, year or two, where it's really coming to the forefront right now. So from working at Pre.dev, what have you learned about the AI industry, and what is the biggest thing you've learned, whether it's technical, whether it's, business wise, from, being on the front lines working at Pre.dev?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing I learned is that, tech and AI moves really fast. And I think the cool thing about, having this technology on the platform is that, as these LLM models get smarter, the product in itself gets smarter, right? So as long as, we continue to, find different pain points that we can solve for these founders. These models are just going to continue to help the product improve. And yeah, I think another thing is, as a startup, you're very lean. So, you're able to make decisions and test out use cases very quickly, as opposed to, bigger organizations that have, 500 to 1,000 employees, right? It's like turning the Titanic around, right? It's a no good. You can't do that. But with a lean startup, it's a lot easier to make decisions on the fly, and those decisions can essentially be what makes or breaks a business. So I think the combination of AI moving fast, and given that we're a startup, we also get to make decisions very fast. I think it's a perfect blend for each other.
How have you used Pre.dev yourself?
Yeah, so I mean, I've used Pre.dev to, old concepts that I've had in the past for, different ideas. I've, played around with the product plenty of times, even done consultation calls for close friends. So I think Pre.dev is, a cool exercise that, also educates you on product and tech. So like, let's say, as I mentioned, you don't have a degree in computer science. You play around with Pre.dev long enough, you'll start, learning certain terminology where you can go in a room with somebody and, you know what you're talking about when it comes to your product. And I think, Pre.dev definitely helps, especially if you're trying to talk to investors, because oftentimes founders, they're not technically savvy, right? And if they don't have a CTO that can go in the room and explain the product, then, that can definitely deter investor confidence. So I think playing around with Pre.dev definitely educates you, and, it makes you appear as someone that knows what they're talking about when it comes to their product.
Yeah, no, I think that's one of the craziest things is that I've seen like James knows more than some full stack engineers now. Like he knows the database, the schema, the API endpoints. He's throwing all these words, tech stack, AI models, automations out. So being able to consult with clients about software when he's not a computer scientist, that shows the power of Pre.dev. But, enough about business and work. I want to dive into, James Hansen, the person. I want to maybe dive into just, our relationship over the last year, because a startup is not just business. It's almost like, I don't want to say it's like a family, but it's like, you know, it's a group of friends that have to work in, day out with nothing, no guarantee really. So yeah, what's that experience been like? And what things are important to you, and, you know, personal growth wise, how do you see your personal growth aligning with, working at this company and the future of AI, the tech industry?
Yeah, for sure. So, a little background, I was an athlete in high school and in college. Played basketball, played football a little bit in middle school. And, I definitely took what I learned on and off the field into business. And I think what you learn as an athlete is, how to, work along with your teammates, how to, view your teammates almost as family, because, you have a common goal, right? To win. And I think in business, to win, you're only as strong as the weakest link within, your company. So I think it's super important to view your partners and your coworkers as, your teammates, essentially. And in order to win, sometimes you have to put your ego to the side and being able to execute on what really matters, which is seeing the business thrive. So I definitely agree that, being a part of this journey has allowed me to use a lot of the skills that I had prior to, show a sense of leadership, show a sense of, friendship and teammate with, you and everybody else is a part of, this company. And I also think, our relationship as well, it goes on and off, business and then in life as well, right? So I think there's a, fine balance, especially when you are close with your coworkers, because, in corporate America, people aren't friendly, right? Especially once a company grows to a crazy size, right? They typically say your coworkers aren't your friends, right? And I think emphasizing company culture when it's young allows a company that's in its infant size, like Pre.dev when we first started, to eventually once it grows to 1,000, 5,000 person company, the culture is still intact because of how it started, right? So I think so far, it's all about transparency. And yeah, sure, folks might clash sometimes and have disagreements, which is normal. But it's all about how we can come back, huddle up, talk about what happened, and continue to move in the right direction.
No, that's amazing. And I mean, yeah, I mean, James, we talk more than like I talk to some of my family members because that's just how a startup works. And, you know, exactly what you said. You think that a corporate environment, they're like, yeah, don't be friends with your coworkers, but it's almost impossible in a startup because it's more than just the business itself. It's like motivating each other to come to work every day and just fight for a cause, essentially. So, and a common vision that, is really speculative. And it's almost like the wild, wild west at this point. But I want to thank James for coming on the pod. We'll definitely have him back once we have Arjun healthy as well. He'll be a regular guest, and we're looking to, show our perspective on the AI market from within, from the front lines. I've said it before, where it gives you a unique perspective on the AI market because we're talking to customers every day, and we understand their needs, we understand their pain points, we understand how rapidly the industry is changing, and we're trying to put our foot in the industry as a small company, and we believe that we have merit. We move 10x faster than any corporate company out there, and you look at our product and you'll see the growth. Like I could show screenshots from when James first started to now, when we do full code generation and coding agents. It's pretty amazing to see how far it's come, and I'm just really appreciative that James has trusted us and been with us, when there really was no guarantee of success. So, moving forward, thank you for coming on the pod, and this has been in Pre.dev production for episode 1 of the AI Intelli-gents. So, until next time, have a good one, guys.
Thanks, Adam. And yeah, talk to you guys soon.
Oh yeah, where can they find you on socials, LinkedIn?
Yeah, so you guys can find me on, LinkedIn, James Hansen, and, probably just type in the space, put Pre.dev, and you'll see me there wearing all white on a stage. So yeah, you can connect with me on LinkedIn.
Awesome, awesome. And to connect to learn more about Pre.dev, simple, go to Pre.dev, follow on Instagram at Pre.dev.ai, at Pre.dev on Twitter, and like and subscribe on YouTube.